Hey everyone, I am just letting you all know that going in the theme of this being a two-woman operation and Elliot and I neither one having any editing experience, I did a really good goof and I did not know that if I clicked onto my notes, it would stop the video. So all of the audio, except for a weird few seconds that are unaccounted for towards the end of the video, are here. But instead of giving you almost 46 minutes of me and one of the most unflattering angles I've ever seen of myself in 31 years, I have imposed the B Movies logo. So today, just think of it as a thrilling part video, part podcast, part radio show, multimedia experience. And I promise I will try not to let this happen again. Thank you for all of your support. So without further ado, I'll let past Bailey take it away. Welcome back to the B Movie channel, Movie Mavens. My name is Bailey, and I put the B in B movies. So, this episode, video, whatever we want to call these bad boys, is actually a really special one, because the week that this video will be released is actually my birthday week. And this video will be released the day after my 31st birthday. So I'm officially one day in to my 31st year on this giant spinning rock. Hopefully it's going well. Future Bailey, I'm sure you're having a good time. But yeah, so it's exciting. It's birthday week around here for me. And so, in a complete juxtaposition, I want to start us off with a little tribute to my mom. Because, and trigger warning for anyone who has issues with parental death or cancer, totally understand. Go ahead and skip ahead. I'll put in the description box the timestamp to skip ahead to, because I'm going to talk about my mom for just a second. So I'm going to give you a minute just to take a breather, skip to the video. Okay, so for those who don't know, my mom passed away a year ago, last July, after a 2-year battle with cancer. And the good news is, in a very crappy situation, it was the best outcome. She was declining. It was best case scenario out of the worst case scenario, if you are following. But my mom is the reason that this channel exists, because my mom has always been supportive of my sister and I. She's always been my biggest cheerleader, and so it's weird now to have a second birthday without her. But I just wanted to thank her, because without her, this channel wouldn't have been started. The B Movies blog would not have been started. And so I'm like tearing up. Second video cries, not clickbait. I just wanted to just give a shout out to my mom, because this channel wouldn't be here without her, and I wouldn't have the love of movies that I had for her, because she just fully, she just instilled that in me. And so, pulling a move that's akin to it's my party and I can cry if I want to. I just wanted to start out with, throughout my blogs and my videos, if you see 4KP for always, that's my mom. And so it's just weird to have a second birthday without her. Again, this is second video, cries, not clickbait. So I just wanted to give that shout out to her. I love you. And also explain the 4KP for always. So, now that I've brought them down, woof, let's go ahead and bring it back up. So what are we talking about this week on the B Movies blog? What exciting content can you look forward to? That's a great question. So this week over on the B Movies blog, you can expect on Monday we talked about, hold on, my whole notes froze, that's cute. So on Monday we talked about 16 Candles, which is a birthday tradition for me. I watch 16 Candles every year during my birthday week. I've done it since I was 15 years old, and so that's just, it's a tried and true tradition for me. So you can read all about what that movie means to me, about other birthday traditions, how I had my indoctrination into the world of John Hughes. I know he is awful, not condoning that, but Molly Ringwald deserves the attention because what he did to her was awful. So, first on Monday, 16 Candles. On Tuesday, we talked about deranged damsels, meaning all of those women in movies that aren't quite what they seem, such as Blake Lively's character from A Simple Favor. We talk about The Roommate. We talk about Single White Female, all of those types of characters. On Wednesday, the day before my birthday, we talked about the 31 movies that made me. That will also be the video essay portion of our video today. I'm going to talk more in depth about these movies and why I chose them. And then finally, next to finally, I don't know how time works. On my birthday, I released a special piece for all of you that's part personal essay, part why I love movies. If you've read my reviews before, it shouldn't surprise you, because that's how we roll here at the B Movies blog. We talk about our feelings, and we talk about the nuances within film. That's just how we are. And finally, today, released on the B Movies blog, we are talking one of my favorite Reese Witherspoon movies of all time, Election. I just rewatched Election the other day because one of the places that I house sit, they only have Amazon Prime. And so I'm limited in my binging, and I rewatched it for, I can't even tell you, the upteenth time. And I was like, I just have to do something on Election because it just has that dry humor to it that is so quintessentially 90s. And so, one more time this week on the B Movies blog, we're talking 16 Candles, Deranged Damsels, me, and Election. So hop on over there. The link will be in the description box. And also, while you're perusing the blog, you might as well subscribe to our Instagram. That's where we will put daily posts, so you can also see daily what is going out if you don't want to wait for the video. But also, please watch these videos because it's fun and I love talking to you. So, you can find us over on Instagram at B-Movies Channel. Same handle as YouTube. Fortunately, I was able to make it work. The marketer in me was so excited. Yay, branding. So, be sure to follow us over there. Because remember, those are daily posts, so you don't have to wait for my video, but also watch this video too. So for Bite-Sized Sunday this week, we are going to be talking about, what do I want to talk about this week? What do I want to talk about? On this Bite-Sized Sunday, oh, I've got it. So for this Bite-Sized Sunday, you can expect a horror ARG I have not talked about before. And one day I will probably do a full piece on it. But for now, we're going to start with a Bite-Sized Sunday on a horror ARG I have not yet covered. I have covered several, so you will probably know. But that's your exclusive Bite-Sized Sunday sneak peek. It's a horror ARG that I've not yet done a full piece on. So get excited for that. And remember, those are Instagram exclusive. So, other than the channel when I give you the teaser, and Instagram, they will not live on the blog. So, as I was saying, this week, now that we have all the business out of the way, let's talk more in depth about all of the movies that have made me. And if you're asking, what does that even mean? Well, what I did is I went through and I made a list of 31 movies because of who I am as a person, that spoke to me in some capacity, that either they have a special meaning behind them, they contributed to my love of film, they have a story behind them. And so I went through, and I've got to take a drink of water, pardon me. I went through and I picked out, in one of the most difficult decisions I've ever made, just the top 31 movies that mean something to me to represent each year I've been on this earth, as well as a few honorable mentions, because we always know I'm a cheater and I will always put honorable mentions just because I can say they're honorable mentions and they don't actually count, even though they're very much on the same page. So let's get started with the 31 movies that made me, and let's go a little bit more depth into these, like why they mean so much. So to start off our list, I have Romy and Michelle's High School Reunion, which should not be a surprise to anyone who knows me. I love Romy and Michelle. It's a movie that I share with my friend Colin. I quote it all the time. It's just a very special movie to me. And for those who don't know, this movie and Rocky Horror Picture Show, which is also on this list, my sister rented those for me from Blockbuster when I was 15 and I was stuck at home with strep throat. And there is nothing like watching Rocky Horror for the first time, especially when it's in a double feature with Romy and Michelle's High School Reunion. So not only does that mark, in my book, like one of those pivotal moments for me, but also it's hilarious. It passes the Bechdel test. It's so accurate if you grew up in a small town and you're going back for a reunion, which I would never, but some people do, and I applaud the hell out of them for it. And so that movie it's one of my comfort movies, along with the next movie on our list, which is Clueless. So Clueless, I don't remember the exact first time I watched Clueless. I know I was very young, because I was very young when because I was born in 92, so I was like 5 or 6 when Clueless came out. And so Clueless is another one for me that it's just, I can quote it constantly. I never get tired of it. It's like putting on an old sweater when it finally gets cold outside, because I live in Texas, so it's at least 90,000 degrees a day. And so it's just one of those comfort movies for me. I love it. Next up, we have Practical Magic. Okay, so Practical Magic, again, could not tell you the first time I watched it. I was very young. But Practical Magic, it's the reason I think it really started my fascination with tarot, and Hocus Pocus, which is also on this list. I would put a broomstick on the arm of our couch. My mom bought me one from Big Lots and would let me just like basically straddle the arm of the couch and pretend like I was flying. And just Practical Magic for me, the fashion is perfect. Sandra Bullock and Nicole Kidman and Stockard Channing and Diane Wiest. I mean, come on, what a cast. And it's this beautiful, to me, it covers all of these different variations of love, be them familial or platonic, or even learning to love each other as they're finally accepted by the townsfolk in general. And so Practical Magic, to me, it's like one of those movies, it's like Barbie, where you just like want to punch a hole straight through the patriarchy after you watch it. You just feel uplifted after you watch it. You feel like you can take on the world. And so that movie just means a lot to me. It was also one that I shared with my mom. Love it. A Cinderella Story. So this is a true story. I've written about this before, but at a place where I worked previously, I sincerely quoted Hilary Duff's monologue, like the waiting for you is like waiting for rain in a drought, useless and disappointing, in a break room full of people to a friend, and everyone in the break room applauded. And so I was like, I don't know whether to be embarrassed or excited, and so I'm going to choose excited and move on with my day. But that movie, to me, growing up, like, in, like the late 90s into, the mid-aughts, that was just a quintessential movie for me. It was one of those movies that just when I was younger, I, was like, I'm gonna die alone. And so it was one of those movies that I would watch anytime I liked someone who didn't like me back, or, there was a bad relationship with a person. And so even to this day, as someone who's now 31 years old, it is still a movie. If I'm heartbroken, I will pop on. And there are some friends who know me so well, if I'm watching a Cinderella story, they're like, oh my God, what happened? So, that movie. Jennifer's Body. Okay. So, if you know me at all, so to establish up front to anyone, I am a queer woman. And I want to make that abundantly clear to anyone who may question that or who may have questions about that. I'm not straight. And I knew I was not straight around the time I was 13 or 14. However, I grew up in a very conservative small town that had a history of being especially cruel to people in the LGBTQI plus community. And so, I have like a hair on my face I can't find. Ugh. Okay, we're just cute. Love this for me. Okay, so Jennifer's Body solidified for me, even though I knew a couple years before it came out that I was queer. It solidified for me, and I've written about this before, and all of the pieces that I'm mentioning where I'm like, I've written about this before, these will all be linked in the blog post. So don't worry if you're like, where can I find these? They're all linked. Don't worry. Again, hi, hello, marketing maven here. We love our backlinks. So don't worry if you're like, where can I find this? Don't worry, it's all in the blog. So with Jennifer's Body, it solidified for me that I was queer. Because while other friends of mine who are straight and who are women were like grossed out, which they shouldn't have even been. It's two girls making out. Like, get over yourselves. I was not disgusted by it. And in my little gay heart, I was like, oh yeah, I am definitely not straight. And so even though over the years I date anybody and everyone, like, it doesn't matter to me how a person identifies unless they identify as a conservative. Oops. But other than that, I date whoever I like, and so that does mean I do sometimes date cis straight men, and so that's always a reminder to me in my head, like, just remember, even if people don't think you are gay because you're dating someone, so you are definitely not gay. So that's why Jennifer's Body means so much to me. I also dressed up as Jennifer in Halloween 2020 when, we were all stuck inside. So I just watched movies. I was staying with my mom because it was right after she got her cancer diagnosis. So you can actually see throughout this piece as well over on the B Movies blog pictures of me from Halloween's past, and one of my costumes was absolutely Jennifer Check because Megan Fox is one of my ultimate crushes, like, hands down. So, moving on to the Blair Witch Project. Okay. So, and especially my horror homies, I hope you know what I mean by this. When you watch a horror movie for the first time and it's like one of those iconic horror movies and you're like, this is horror. That was me with the Blair Witch Project. The first time I saw it, I was young, and I was like, this is a horror movie. And it probably, this, Scream was another one, which is also on this list. Carrie, Halloween 78 was another big one for me. But the Blair Witch Project was one of those movies that I'm like, oh, this is a horror. Like, this is horror. This defines the genre. And I'm like, you can see its touches on and like, I know that technically speaking, Cannibal Holocaust was the big kickoff to things, I know. But, the Blair Witch Project for me defines found footage, and it was one of those movies that I watched and I was like, yes, this is a horror movie. So then on a complete opposite end of the spectrum, we have 10 Things I Hate About You. Again, I was born in 92. I grew up in the late 90s to like the mid-aughts, and so this movie I quote it all the time. It's another movie I share with my friend Colin. Um, it's one of those movies I have seen outdoor showings. Like, I'm very fortunate to live in a city where I have those options, but this movie is iconic. It's so good. If you don't tear up when Julia Stiles delivers her monologue at the end, I don't know how to help you, but it's just another movie that means a lot to me because I've grown up with it, and it's a big comfort movie. So next up we have Carrie, which, as I just mentioned, was another pivotal horror movie for me. So this is the first horror movie I remember watching, because, as I've said in the last video, I was sick a lot as a kid, and also there was just some stuff with some stuff I'm not going to get into, but if you know, you know, there was just some stuff in my childhood, so I don't, there's like a good chunk of the first few years that I don't remember, but I do remember watching Carrie, especially because KP, my mom, was like, you need to sit at the very end of the bed. At the very end of the movie, if you've seen Carrie, you know what happens. And she's like, you need to sit at the edge of the bed, because if you aren't paying attention, you're going to miss it. So I did. And then I jumped so hard, I slammed into the headboard. And even up until right before she died, KP would always be like, people are going to think I was so awful to you, which shows, like, my mom, how good my mom was, that she was terrified people were going to think she was a bad mother, because I accidentally got so scared I flung myself backwards. And I mean, also, I've always been uncoordinated. I went and saw Jinx Monsoon a couple nights ago, and I was so uncoordinated that me walking down these tiny steps on a mezzanine, I had to hold someone's hand up and down, because I'm one of the most uncoordinated human beings alive. So that also, I was like, that's also not on you, Mom. That's just who I am as a person. So next up, Heathers. Oh my God. So Heathers, and I talk about this in the piece. My mom and I watched Heathers with my mom for the first time, and we both ordered monocles, like Veronica's monocle. That's a lot of consonants. So, I love Heathers. Huge Winona Ryder stan through and through. I think the media did her so dirty. She's one that I'm really glad got a redemption arc, because I think she was really painted as a villain, and I'm really glad to see her in Stranger Things and, like, all of these films coming up, because she really deserved that second chance. So moving on, Scream, iconic. This is another movie that really means a lot to me, because it was a movie I watched and I was like, oh yes, that's a horror movie. Hang on. Sorry, everyone. My dogs have decided to go crazy, and like I said, this may just happen because we're rolling with it. We're just basically live streaming. So Scream was another big one for me. I watched it and I was like, this is horror. It also instilled in me my love of meta commentary within especially horror. You know, things like Technical versus Evil, so on and so forth. I love meta horror. Cabin in the Woods is another good example. I was Drew Barrymore as Scream, so you can see that photo as well. But yeah, Scream to me, I was like, this is horror. And I did get to meet Wes Craven before he passed, R.I.P., and he was actually one of the nicest people in the world. And I've also met Matthew Lillard. If you ever see this, Matthew Lillard is the nicest human being, and please protect him at all costs. He is the nicest. He came up and started talking to me at South by when it was a year that one of his movies was premiering. And yeah, nicest person in the world. So I've also had good experiences with the director, with Matthew Lillard. And so I love Scream. It's Scream to me, second favorite franchise behind Halloween. And I said what I said. So next up we have a Goofy movie. So a Goofy movie, it's my favorite Disney movie because a Goofy movie is basically a 90s teen musical that's animated. And I love it. I think that I love it for a lot of reasons, and it holds up really well because Goofy, which in a sentence I never thought I would say that I'm about to say, Goofy is this character who isn't afraid to cry in front of his son, isn't afraid to bond with his son, and I just think that it's really important to note that he does so much that so many things rather that a lot of people would criticize, and I think that he's a good example of like a healthy fatherly relationship. And so I think that that's also part of the reason that I love it. And so yeah, plus the music's incredible. Like, come on. Next up is Harriet the Spy. So Harriet the Spy, and this piece is linked, don't worry. This is actually one of the 4 movies that made me realize I wanted to be a writer. I always have kept journals, and what I said in here is true. Is one day a couple of the guys that I was friends with stole my journal out of my bag, and one of them read an entry and then like immediately gave it back, so I don't know how to take that. So yeah, I've always written about my life. My motto is I don't write something unless it's true. So I don't know what that says about me. But if you've ever read anything that I've written, no, it's 100% true. Or like if it's not 100%, it's like I changed someone's name, or I made the setting more vague, something like that, to just kind of protect another person. But at its core, every single thing I write is true. So, moving on to Almost Famous. Another example, this is another one of the 4 movies. I was like, I am a writer. This is what I want to do. And like, fortunately, it's also one of the very few things on this planet I'll be like, yeah, I'm a good writer. There are very few things that I will outwardly compliment myself for, and this is one of them. And it also has Patrick, I don't know if it's Fugit or Fugit. I say Fugit, I don't know. Oops. But I love him. And if you don't know who Patrick Fugit is, he is the kid in Almost Famous. He's in Saved. He's in, most recently, like, My Heart Won't Beat Unless You Tell It To, which is a phenomenal vampire movie if you haven't seen it. I'm, like, blanking on anything he's ever done. But he's wonderful. I adore him. So next up we have Purple Rain. I love Prince, and that's something that you need. Prince is one of my favorite artists of all time. Like, I love Prince. I also tend to watch Purple Rain a lot around my birthday. The night that Prince died, it was this really cool core memory that I have because none of my friends either wanted to or could go see the $5 Purple Rain screening at Alamo Drafthouse. And so I went by myself, and it was like being at church, because that's a whole other story for a whole other day. Like, for those who don't know, I don't go to church, anything like that. I have a lot of religious trauma from my past, which, like, you know, I grew up in the South, so, like, it's a given. But that was, like, I was like, this must be, like, how some people feel about church, is, like, how I feel in this Alamo Drafthouse Theater singing Purple Rain out loud with all of these other people. And so it's just, afterwards I went to Magnolia Cafe and met up with one of my friends. Our favorite waitress was working. I used to work around there, and so we would go in there a lot because I used to work, when I worked in the service industry, I closed a lot. And so she gave us like a bunch of free stuff in honor of Prince. It was just, it's like one of those like just things you look back on and you're like, oh my gosh, that was such a good day and night, and that's how I feel about Purple Rain. Next up, 16 Candles. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this one. There's a whole separate piece about it. It's a birthday tradition, and I always either eat pizza or order Chinese food. Don't know why. I'm pretty sure it started with my mom, but that's just a little birthday tradition. I have a bunch of quirky traditions. I actually just need to write a piece about that one day, about all of our little familial traditions, but that's a big one for me. Next up, Legally Blonde. Okay. So Legally Blonde to me, and I wrote a whole piece about it too, that again, all of these things are linked in the 31 movies post, so don't worry. Excuse me, that's so rude. So Legally Blonde for me, when I have clinical depression and anxiety. And if it was not apparent from the last video where I was breathing so heavy in between words because I was so nervous. But I suffer from both of those. And if I'm ever in a depressive episode, Legally Blonde specifically, and most of you are already going to know what I'm going to say, but that scene when Warner just absolutely acts like a total D-bag to her at the party. And she, like, that night, all dressed up, goes to get a new MacBook. That's where she runs into Luke Wilson in line. And it has that really, like, upbeat song during it. I'm not going to say it or sing it because this is YouTube, but you know what I'm talking about. And so that makes me feel so empowered. And so it's a big, if I'm really down and I watch Legally Blonde, it just gives me the serotonin boost that I need. And, like, obviously, I went to therapy. Please know there are other things involved. But it's just one of those feel-good movies that definitely helps me. So next up is The Halloween Tree. So The Halloween Tree is very special to me because at the start of every October or, like, Halloween season, my mom would go to, in our Kroger, there was a video store. And she would go and she would rent The Halloween Tree in Elvira from usually there, because they also had those big, like, sugar cookies with the royal icing, and they had, like, different Halloween scenes. She'd usually rent it from there, she'd go to Blockbuster or wherever. And we would start off Halloween by watching Elvira, Mistress of the Dark, and The Halloween Tree, the animated special. And I have, one of my tattoos is, I don't know, it's always mirrored, so I forget. So, like, you can see, I have the pumpkin. When my mom got diagnosed, she gave my sister and I each a copy of The Halloween Tree and wrote in it. And so I got her inscription, the signature is from her inscription. I'm mirrored, so yeah, so here. So, like, that's from, like, her actual, that's in her actual handwriting and everything. And so it just means a lot to me. And so that movie's definitely on this list. So, yeah. Next up is Ginger Snaps. Okay. Ginger Snaps. It's one I discovered back in my day, for any youths watching this, the Sci-Fi Channel, mostly on Sundays, used to run horror movie marathons. And it would be everything from all of the Ginger Snaps, all the Child's Plays, whatever they wanted, Sci-Fi Originals, whatever they wanted, they just ran. And so I watched Ginger Snaps for the first time with my mom. They did all three. And so, like, Ginger Snaps back, and Ginger Snaps the beginning. And my mom and I both fell in love with them. And I love Ginger Snaps. I think it's a brilliant metaphor for puberty. Catherine Isabella, who's also, maybe Catherine Isabel, I'm second guessing myself, but she's in American Mary, which I also love and would highly recommend. The Sussex Sisters are incredible. I actually, like, my hot take is I love their version of Rabid. So definitely recommend them. Next up, Cruel Intentions. Oh my god, Cruel Intentions. I think Cruel Intentions is not only a movie that made me, it's also just one of my favorite movies of all time. I mean, you have Sarah Michelle Gellar, who looks hot as frick. You have Ryan Felipe, Reese Witherspoon, Joshua Jackson, who I'm a Joshua Jackson stan. Like, I love him to pieces. I was Team Pacey. Love him. Is it okay that he's playing a gay character? No. Don't know. But he's in it. And, that movie, it's another movie I can quote. She's, Catherine Martul is on my tattoo list. I'm actually gonna get her everything about this movie, the soundtrack, it's just painfully 90s. It's like the same thing I think about Election that we talked about earlier. It's just painfully 90s, and I love it. Next up, we have Elvira, Mistress of the Dark. Okay. Even just in the 2 videos this being the second, this should be a no-brainer. It's like I said, my mom, it was one she would always rent for us, and then last year I finally did my Elvira costume. She's been on my bucket list forever, and I was like, for me being 30, flirty, and thriving, I need to do Elvira, and it turned out really well, and I still pat myself on the back, because that makeup, I don't know how you do it, girl. I respect you. I already had the utmost respect for you, but I respect you more because that makeup is so, especially the eye part. I struggled so hard. And I am a Halloween queen. I do multiple costumes each Halloween, and that makeup about took me out. So, more power to you. I already had the highest respect for you. I don't know how it could have gotten any higher, but it did when I tried to do your makeup. So next up, Jawbreaker. Oh, Jawbreaker. I watched this movie for the first time in college, and Jawbreaker, it's just so quintessentially 90s, and the storyline is insane, and at parts it feels like a fever dream, and I don't know why it's only like, I don't even know if it's at 30% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is the weirdest thing to me, but it's a must-see. If you love the likes of Clueless, it's like a mixture of Clueless and Cruel Intentions. And so if you like those movies and have not seen Jawbreaker, find it. Find it immediately. So next up, we have Silence of the Lambs. And so again, this is true. My old boss, I don't know, Dave, if you're watching this, hello. Dave can verify, in a job interview for him, he asked me what my favorite movie was, and without skipping a beat, I said Silence of the Lambs, and he hired me. It's Silence of the Lambs. I mean, there's a reason that it is so critically acclaimed. It scares you, but it takes away that paranormal parameter, and it puts you in this state of mind that you think at first is so outlandish, but when you break it down into its most minute parts, this could happen. I mean, Mindhunter, think about Mindhunter. Mindhunter is based on a true story. And so, things like this could happen. And I think that that's the scariest part of Silence of the Lambs, is that there are truly people like this out there. And to me, again, it's a basically perfect movie. So next up, we have The Guest. Okay, so The Guest, if you've never seen The Guest, again, watch it immediately. It's so good. It's Dan Stevens, Micah Monroe. It's just phenomenal. I linked a piece I've written about it before. But the less you know going in, the better. All I'll tell you, it's like Halloween meets The Terminator. Truthfully. And I still think to this day it's one of the most underrated movies. It's Adam Wingard, who VHS 2, the most recent iteration of The Blair Witch. Phenomenal movie. Next up, they're given The Craft. Again, could not tell you the first time I watched The Craft. It's been one of those movies that has always been ingrained in my DNA. It's a classic. It's quotable. It's just iconic. I would be remiss if I did not comment. I'm glad that Rachel True is starting to get her fame. She's been a guest judge on Dragula. She has done an episode of their podcast, which is really good, and you should listen to Creatures of the Night if you don't. She was in Horror Noir. She is great, and I think that it's unacceptable that she was treated differently on the press junkets and throughout the tour. I think that's ridiculous, and I really hope that she continues to get roles and continues to be involved in things, because, again, I think it's absolutely appalling how she was treated during the press junkets, and things of that nature for the craft, and I'm really sorry that she had to go through that. And so next up, we have Halloween 78. Again, a given. I have a Laurie Strode tattoo. I've been Laurie Strode for Halloween. It was one of those movies I'm like, this is horror. This is horror. This is fear. This, yes. Once again, I'm reminded why I love movies. So, Halloween 78, unspoken classic. Still mad about Halloween Ends. We're not going to talk about it. I'm just pretending it's not canon. So moving on. So Saved. If you grew up in a small town, this movie will resonate with you on so many levels. There are people, I just rewatched this the other day too. There are people that I could name by name who are the embodiment of Hilary Faye. Like, I could name names. It's too real for me. And that's why I love it so much, because the message of Saved is that God is kind of what you make it. And what, or him, her, they, however God or a higher being, or if you don't believe in a higher being, that's fine. Like, God is love. God is family. God is friends. God is chosen family. And that's the bigger message of Saved. And if someone tells you differently, or tries to tell you that there's a religious, that's not what Saved is about. So, moving on, Rocky Horror Picture Show. It was in the 2 movies my sister rented for me from Blockbuster. I have seen Rocky Horror Picture Show in my life probably at least 50 times. At least over the past 16 years. At least. I've seen it live 10 or 12 times at least. I love it. It's such an experience of, like, I don't know even how to describe. It's like I said about Purple Rain. It's kind of like, I was like, this is how some people must feel at church. Like, it's that feeling of being a part of something greater than yourself. And I know that you're probably like, girl, what are you talking about? It's Rocky Horror Picture Show. That's how it is for me. It's just like a part of, and I think that that's why movies are so important to me in general. So next up, Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Okay, we know Chrissy Swanson's kind of trash. So this was fortunately way before she decided to do the things she did and say the things she said, but I grew up, we worshipped in the house of Buffy, we worshipped in the house of Charmed, Angel, all of them. Those were constantly on the TV or recorded. True Blood, which came along later, all of that. And so the movie, to me, my sister and I often quote when Paul Reubens is in, like, that little stairwell corner thing and he's, like, dying. We do the, oh, all the time if we, like, stub our toe or anything. And so that's just within my family, a big movie. Lost Boys, another just iconic movie that I can't pinpoint the last time that I watched, the first time that I watched it. There's a running joke, my friend Brooke will probably laugh at this part. A few years ago, for some reason, I went to watch The Lost Boys, which I watch every Halloween, and it was nowhere to be found. And at the time, it was when some streaming services, I'm not going to name by name because the strikes may still be going on at this point, don't want to give them any credit. A streaming service did not just have one single iteration, it had 3. I apparently had the one that did not have The Lost Boys on it, and I was going to have to pay several dollars more just to upgrade to that iteration, which, I mean, is problematic in and of itself. And so I had to do ungodly things to track down a copy of The Lost Boys, and so finally, a year later, my sister just bought me the DVD pack that has the original and, like, the 2, like, not reboots, they're sequels. I think one's a requel, technically, if we're going to go by Scream 2022 rules. So yeah. So now I have it, and of course now it's on several platforms. I'm like, perfect. So, moving on, Hocus Pocus. I have a Winifred Sanderson tattoo down my leg. If you read my tattoo piece, you know that. But yeah, it came out when I was a year old. But I mean, it was a constant watch in our house. It's an annual rewatch every single year. Unlike a lot of people, I actually didn't mind the reboot at all. I thought it was cute. So, but yeah, Hocus Pocus, iconic. And if you are a big horror fan, I love Omni Kratz, who played Max, because he was also in Erie, Indiana. So, last but not least on the main list, because of course there are some honorable mentions, I cheat. I told you that. I admitted it. We have Confessions of a Teenage Drama Queen. So, this is going to be the most dramatic, which I mean is fitting considering what movie we're talking about. This is going to be the most dramatic statement. But, like, I felt like Lola's step I always felt bigger than my hometown. I felt like this is not where I'm supposed to be. And, like it turned out it was very much not. But that's how I constantly felt. I was like, oh, and I have a full piece on this, so I'm not going to go fully into it. But, like, we thrifted my clothes. My mom made my clothes. My mom made my Halloween costumes. Even until my mom made my Halloween costumes, like, I'm not even kidding. The dress that I wore in 2020 was a dress she made when I was Tiffany Valentine from Bride of Chucky. And, see, like, from the Child's Play series. She made my costumes till, like, 2019. Yeah, so, like, even up until then, she made the Sarah Sanderson skirt that you see, in my photos from Sarah Sanderson a few years ago. In 2018, she made that. So, yeah. So, Hocus Pocus is great. And I don't know why I'm, like, decided that this is the movie I'm just gonna, like, completely go off the rails on, but that's Hocus Pocus. So for my honorable mentions, we have Bring It On, which, when I tell you, on Instagram, I don't remember if I put out a poll or if I just put in my status, like, should I write a piece about how Missy was actually in love with Torrance the entire time? Out of all of the years I've been writing about pop culture, when I tell you, that is one of the most requested pieces, if not the most, I've ever done in my writing career. And it's just true. Does Bring It On hold up? Parts of it do. So just keep that in mind when you're watching it. Remember that it's early on, so like, But read my piece that says that Missy was in love with Torrance all the time, and it'll make it infinitely better. And I still stand by the fact that I say that Torrance would be a pillow princess. So, moving on. Hope Floats. Okay. This movie, and Where the Heart Is, which it didn't make it onto my honorable mention, but these were two other movies. My mom was a huge Sandra Bullock fan. I got to meet Sandra Bullock. She probably would not remember me. It was when I was working at an ice cream store. She was so nice. And she's just been, she was a staple in my household growing up. And so in Help Float, she goes to, like, her character goes to that thrift store and gets that, like, lunch. I don't know if she goes to the thrift store in the movie. I'm, like, getting wrapped up in particulars that no one cares about and that are irrelevant. So she has that, Bailey, we know you love movies. It's very apparent. You have started a YouTube channel. Everyone knows. So she has, like, that workman's lunchbox, the silver one, and, like, it took my mom a couple years, and we scoured thrift stores and antique stores, and we finally found her one, and she carried it as a purse forever. And I have it now in my bathroom, and it's just, like, just iconic. And then finally, we have The Faculty. The Faculty is another, I watched it, I want to say, like, early high school, like, maybe my freshman year of high school, when I was, like, 14, was when I watched The Faculty for the first time, 13, 14. And it's another one of those movies for me. I just love it. I think it's a dang near perfect movie. I think that, I think it's iconic. And I know that I keep saying that word, but, like, these are the 31 movies I claim that made me. So I think that overusing iconic is warranted. I don't know why. I'm ooh, I went like a little Sunset Boulevard. I don't know why. I guess this is what's happening being so close to 31 and fully in my 30s. But yeah, I think The Faculty is great. I think it's a great horror movie. I would it teeters on dark comedy. I'm a Robert Rodriguez girl. I think he's great. And so yeah, those are the 31 movies that made me. There are some other movies like Land Before Time my sister brought up when she was trying to guess what movies I was going to put on here. I used to call my mom Bigfoot and she would call me Littlefoot after Land Before Time. There are other movies. Into the movies that made me. I am officially 31 years old, which is wild. So to recap, this week on the B Movies blog, you got me, you got Election, you got 16 Candles. For Bite Size Sunday, it's going to be a horror ARG I have not covered before. And lastly, if you're not already subscribed, please be sure to subscribe to this channel. Good content's going to be coming at you every week. Follow us over on the B Movies Instagram, at B Movies Channel. Follow me. I am at Lisa_Frankenstein on Instagram. Follow Elliot at reading.with.red over on Instagram. So be sure to like, subscribe, share this video, because I love doing this, and I like talking to you guys, and I like doing this, if I can be honest, between friends. I like doing this a lot more than I thought I would. And so I'm excited to keep going on this journey with you all. So now that all the business is taken care of, all that's left to do is fade to black.